It was really a blessing in disguise for me to have all these issues early on, because now I'm always testing. I'm always taking care of myself. I'm always like managing. I don't have the luxury of burning the candle at both ends, because my body tells me pretty quickly like, hey, this isn't working, right? Yeah. And so in a sense, it's been quite nice, because now for the rest of my life, I'm going to be dialed, right? And so my, I guess, warning or so to other entrepreneurs out there is like, don't wait for the crisis to happen in order for you to make this a priority. Because if you really care about making a lot of money, the thing that will destroy your bank account more than anything is getting sick.
What's up, all you big entrepreneur slobs out there? I am joined today by somebody who's going to teach all of us how to live a bit healthier, including myself. I'm one of those entrepreneur slobs, and also how to make more money too, how to grow your audience, and how to actually enjoy your life while also growing your business too. So I'm joined here today by the Wellness Daddy. If you want to call him Daddy, are they free to do that as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm joined. So joined here today by Daddy, and Daddy, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody out there and just say a bit about what you do, your audience, and all the cool stuff you're working on.
Yeah, my name is Kyle Lasota, and I am the Chief Daddy Officer at wellnessdaddy.com. And we're basically a media company, and we help people find the best products, people, and ideas in health and wellness.
Awesome, man. So, like, with that said, I mean, what kind of person are you working with? Like, you say you're helping someone find a product. Is this like somebody who has like an audience and is like an entrepreneur, wants to sell more products, or like who exactly is that person?
Yeah, I'd say I like to serve people who are like me. So I would say ambitious people, high performing people, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, executives. And I would also say people who are health optimizers. So people who are just down to get better in their health and are on the journey, whatever that looks like for them, of trying to find ways to improve, whether it's their energy, their sleep, their training, their gut, like whatever the thing is that they're working on. Usually people find my channel and my resources as a way of like, they're on this search, and I help like filter all the noise out there so that they can make the best decision for them.
I was going to say, so funny enough, and actually speaking of finding you, I was watching, like Brian Johnson's Don't Die thing on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, I was like, is that Kyle? And you're just sitting there in his kitchen just eating his protocol. And I was like, that's impressive. But yeah, so I was going to ask you, I mean, when it comes to the wellness space, like you said, there's a lot of noise, right? Yep. And there's a lot of like fads that are also based around some sort of truth and validity behind, like, you know, like for example, there might be like lion's mane, for example. Like you might find like lion's mane's really good for focus and things like that, but there's a supplement that doesn't have like an actual clinical dose. But it's like, do they need a clinical dose? Like what is that clinical dose? How much you need to be effective? Like how do you help like either simplify or clarify what is actually legit for people who are in the wellness or who are starting to take care of themselves, go into the wellness space? Like I guess, like, how do you approach that from your perspective of like making sure that you're actually giving people solid information that's not crowded, non-biased?
Yeah. So the backstory is that I spent like $250,000 on my own personal health. Wow. And the reason why I did that is because I was having issues and I couldn't figure out why I was having these issues.
What were some of those issues?
I had a mold infection when I was in my early 20s, and it took me about 5 years to figure that out. And so on the journey to trying to figure that out, I spent a lot of money, tried a lot of different things, and honestly went down a lot of different routes that weren't probably right for me. And I wasted a lot of time, money, and energy. And so like the way that I like to think about it as my general philosophy and like the thesis for Wellness Daddy is that if it doesn't go in my body, I don't recommend it. And if I, for whatever reason, wouldn't put it in my body, if I wouldn't recommend it to my mom, then we don't really give it a platform. Or if we do give it a platform, we talk about what to look out for. Yeah. And so I kind of use that as my guiding light to help people make decisions. And because I'm a quote unquote sensitive person I've established for myself that I am a sensitive person. And so
what is that definition of sensitive?
It just means things affect me more than others.
Gotcha.
And so I could take something, or I could try some type of lifestyle intervention, and I'll just feel a lot more. Yeah. And so as a byproduct of feeling a lot more, there's just certain things that I will not tolerate. And my body will tell me really quickly, hey, this doesn't work, or this isn't cool, or like whatever. And so I have to be very particular about ingredients. I have to be very particular about different types of foods. I have to be very particular about what I choose to engage in respect to my health and my wellness. So as a byproduct of that, I tend to have a really high standard and a really good filter for what gets a green light and what doesn't. And so I think that's what makes me a natural good filter for other people.
Interesting. So now there is always like the kind of the bias. So it's like, it is your body, right? So certain things might react really well for you. Like there's certain people who I know if they eat raw vegetables, they like croak up and die. Other people like they eat vegetables. Like I feel like I'm on top of the world. So like, what are like, I guess like in your content too, I guess, how do you caveat as well, like, hey, this works well for me? Or are there things that maybe you do recommend that maybe don't work well for you, but that do work well for other people?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And so the way that I think about it is I'm always trying to give context, right? And I always like to give nuance as well. So nothing's really, in health, my experience is that nothing's really black or white. And so I like to give people ways of thinking versus just pure prescriptions all the time, right? And so it's more about frameworks and philosophies and overarching ideas than it is about just like always do this or always do that. I think in the past, when I was less evolved and developed and had less experience, I would be very prescriptive and I would be very like, this is the way. And I had a very rigid thinking, but I like to have strong beliefs and strong habits loosely held.
So it's more of it's developed more into like a framework than a protocol.
Yeah. And it's really about how to think, right? And like, after spending all this money, trying all these different products, what I realized is the most important thing is the fundamentals. And so if you can really focus on the fundamentals, and if we're talking about products that support the fundamentals, then that's going to be the 80-20, where you're going to get the most bang for your buck and probably have the less likelihood of doing any damage.
Gotcha.
Right? Because you are on your health journey, on anyone's health journey. I think something people like want to do, but it's just never going to be that way, is they want to get it perfect.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have repercussions from those mistakes. The goal is not to make mistakes. The goal is to learn from those mistakes as quickly as you can and start to make adjustments so that you find what's right for you.
Okay. And what would you say are some of those biggest mistakes? Like somebody's like, man, I'm just struggling to focus. My energy's low. Like what are, I guess, or before we go into the mistakes, what are some like the immediate quick things that somebody could do who's like an entrepreneur? They're like, I'm super busy, blah, blah, blah. Like, is it like sleep? Is it like a certain thing like to cut out of their diet? Like what are some like the fundamental things that you're like, if you're not already doing this, do this, and this should fix like potentially 80% of the problems that you're dealing with? Yeah.
I mean, you already kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I always like to start with sleep because it's the easiest and it's the simplest, right? Yeah. And when it comes to sleep, the first thing that you can do is just go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. Believe it or not, that's insanely hard. Yeah. Right. So
no, dude. No.
Yeah. So I try to reinforce to people, it's like, hey, pick a bedtime that's going to be consistent and that you can do sustainably for a long time. And then within half an hour to an hour of that window, be in bed every single night without fail. And so if you want to have a social life and you want to go out and you want to like be out at night, that's fine. Just pick a later bedtime and know that you're not going to be able to get up early and have a later wake time. So like if midnight is the time that you go to bed and then you set your wake time for 8 o'clock, so you got 8 hours of total sleep, you really actually need a little bit more than that. You probably have to be in bed by 11:30, wake up at 8:30 in order to get 8 hours. But that's another story. That's very sustainable for someone who wants a social life and wants to go out, right? Because that way you can get into the circadian rhythm entrainment of, seeing the sun at the same time, dimming the lights at the same time, eating meals at the same time, and it becomes very habituated. And if you can be consistent with that habituation, then you can have really, really good results with your hormones, with your training, with your energy, with your focus, with your blood sugar, with your brain's ability to concentrate, and all the things that you want as an entrepreneur. It really comes back to having a really healthy circadian rhythm. And that's the foundation of foundations. Then after that, when we look at food, I think the best advice that I have for people is just the real food diet.
Yep.
So, like you said, some people thrive on vegetables. Some people get really sick on vegetables. I personally need to cook all my vegetables and like make sure they're steamed and like mushy. And that's how I do vegetables. But I'm also big on protein. So I eat about 150 to 180 grams of protein every day.
Solid.
And then I have a higher fat and a medium carb ratio. And I just found that that's what works for me right now.
Yeah.
But that's going to change depending on my stress, depending on my sleep, depending on my training, depending on my goals and what I'm actually trying to do, my metabolism, all these different things. So that's what I mean when it comes to like what where I'm arriving with health and wellness is just like, how do we think about how to augment our decisions and our behavior based on what's happening in life, right? So like, are we in the middle of scaling, right? Are we fighting with our girlfriend? Are we spending too much time on our phone? Yeah. Are we like filling our social bucket? Like all these things are moving variables in a big vector of what makes our health and our constitution and our energy and our mood and all these and our hormones and all this stuff. It's like a never ending moving puzzle, right? Yeah. So the most important thing is like, okay, how do I manipulate these variables in order to get the outcomes that I want? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So I guess like, because I mean, every entrepreneur, like we love to talk about how we're so disciplined and all this. We are very disciplined in our businesses. We are usually terrible everywhere else. Like I know friends who, including myself, I remember there was an entire week where I counted the amount of hours. I left my apartment building for 3 hours in an entire week once.
Wow.
It's probably longer than a week if I'm going to be very, very honest with myself. Like just working all the time. I'd leave to maybe go grab food or something, come right back, get groceries delivered. I'm like, there's no reason to leave. And I get to work my business 15 hours a day, which, you know, during that time, it was actually, I felt really good because I was very productive in that sense, but also like my sleep was terrible. I was like, hey, I'm super locked in on work. I feel great. And I feel like a lot of people can resonate with this as well too. I was locked in. I felt great in my business. And I was like, I'm getting a lot of productivity, but like mentally I was just like deteriorating. Like I was feeling depressed. I would feel anxious. I would like get off of work and I'm just like, well, what else is there to kind of do now? And then I'm like sit on my phone and just, you know, dopamine max for like 3 hours and be like, oh, it's like 2 a.m. And then I'd go to sleep, wake up at 5 a.m. just like, I got to do something. I'd like check Slack at 5 a.m. like no messages yet. And then I'm like, okay. And I'd go back to sleep and then boom, no more, you know, sleep is just complete ruin at that point. So like, what would you say are like, I guess, how do you manage that wave of variables? Like the different variables that are coming up in your life, like, okay, you know, I'm going into like a grind season. I'm going into, my stress is a lot higher this week. Like, is it just kind of knowing the certain things that make you feel good in certain areas? Or like, how do you also make sure that you are staying relatively optimized, even when you have to make sacrifices? Like you're traveling to another time zone, for example, for work, or like like there's thinking about it and there's being educated on it, but as you said, you can also become overeducated on it, right? And like you try to be perfect, and sometimes being perfect, you almost make sacrifices where it's like, like, you know, maybe that I didn't need to make that sacrifice that actually hurt me by trying to make this situation perfect.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I think about levers, like what levers am I pulling? And so I was just literally telling Ani before we started this podcast, it's like, okay, I'm really tired right now. And I'm really tired because I just got back from a month-long trip in Colombia that was like super adventurous and super fun. But then I came home, moved into a brand new place. Then I had a conference the next weekend. Then I threw an event the next weekend, and I'm still moving in. And then I just closed the biggest deals of my life. And like,
congratulations!
Thank you.
Shout out to Eli, the travel guy.
For the Mojo Mastermind.
Yeah, I saw the Mojo Mastermind chat.
Yeah. And so. Like I'm feeling like I looked at a video of me, and like if you watch the video of me now, like I look pretty tired. Like I know I look tired, and I am tired, and that's because I've been sleeping without sheets on my bed for the last 2 weeks, and there was like no blinds on my windows, and there's like it's a new environment, and there's like all this other stuff in my business happening, and so consciously I made the decision this week. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna dial back on my training. I've been going 5 days a week. I'm gonna go back to 3 days a week, and I'm really gonna focus on active recovery. So that means more sauna, that means more walking, that means more grounding, that means more meditation. That means I'm not going to go out this weekend. I'm going to get in bed by 10:30, and I'm just going to really focus on parasympathetic activity and focus on my recovery, because I can see and feel in my body, Kyle, you need some rest, right? Yeah. And so I'm always just building that relationship with myself and checking in, like, what does my body really need in this moment? And so when we talk about the fundamentals, we have food, we have sleep, we have exercise, we have stress management, we have purpose, we have sunlight, we have hydration, and community and play, right? And so I'm looking at the fundamentals, and I'm like, okay, which one of these things is the most out? And then how can I, like, because I've been doing this for so long, it's like, okay, what do I need to do in order to fill that bucket and like replenish, right? Whether it's like I need to be more specific with my training, right? Or maybe it's I need to eat more because I am pushing it in the gym and I'm underfeeding, right? And I'm going through some stress, which is a big change in life, is moving into a new place, right? That's one of the biggest stressors that you can have in life. It's like moving, like deaths of a loved one, and like fights in your relationship, or like stuff like, those are like some of the big stressors, right? Yep. So I know that at least one of these is going on for me. Mm-hmm. So let me then make sure my nutrition's really dialed, which means I'm going to eat really clean. So that's no seed oils, that's real food, that's high protein, that's moderate carb. And I'm going to dial back my training. I'm going to get lots of sunlight. I'm going to go spend more time at Barton Springs. And just like, I have the luxury, and we could talk about this too, because I set my business up this way. I have the luxury to take like weeks off at a time. Yeah. And like the business will still run, we'll still make money, and like things are moving forward, or I'll just do the minimum effective dose on my business. I'm just like, what's the one or two inputs that need to happen in order to make sure things are moving forward, so that I'm not bottlenecking what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah. And so with that, I mean, like for the people who, let's say they don't have that luxury right now, right? Like let's say they're aggressively scaling. Like if they walk away from the business, a lot of people watch this are high ticket industry people, coaches, consultants, agency owners. Chances are they're not streamlined yet. Like they can't step away from their business, and they're in a high growth state, which is also like a good place to be in as well too, but it's not sustainable forever. So like, what would you say to those people who like, I guess like, how would you even give yourself permission to take that step away? Cause like when I'm in that state, I'm like, anything that's not working on the business, I'm like, I am actively sabotaging my future, right? And that's like that's a mindset that I think a lot of entrepreneurs do have as well too. And I feel like you've fundamentally, whether it's inherently in your personality or your characteristic traits, or they just align towards making sure that, you know, you're more focused on your personal development as well as you're growing your business. Like, how do you give yourself that permission?
I think,
or how do you frame it, I guess, to be like, this could actually help me more by doing this?
I think it's all about extending timelines, right? Because like the only reason why you feel that way is because you have scarcity of time. Because you think that like this opportunity is going to go away. Or like we're never going to be in this position again. But like really, the way I look at it is like, if you don't take care of your health and you don't put yourself first, nothing happens in the business. Business goes away real quick. And that's happened to me. You know, there was a point where I was completely bedridden, and I had maybe an hour or two of energy in me every day to work. And so I had to architect my business around that hour. So it's like, if I want to grow my business and I only have an hour a day to do that, what am I going to do? You know? So it forces you to be really effective. And what I found, because I just got back from this trip from Colombia, it was kind of like a mini retirement. I worked maybe 5 to 10 hours in the month, and we still made the same revenue. Yeah. And what I took away from that is that there's very few things in the business you actually have to do. And there's just these 2 or maybe 3 dials at most you have to turn. And so it's all about just finding out what are those dials and then turning them. And then the psychological part of this is letting go of the guilt. Because as I was replacing my active income with passive income, what I noticed is that my friends were working really hard and I was not.
I remember Eli saying that he was just wanting to kill you all the time. So like, this guy's just chilling on the couch and I'm struggling.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends have bigger businesses than I do, but we make about the same profit. You know, and I work maybe a tenth of the time that they do. And the way that I think other people can start thinking about this is just taking a step back and really questioning, am I the one who has to do this? Because most of the time it's not true, but a lot of entrepreneurs get their ego satisfied through their work, right? And there's a lot of significance that is built out of building your business. And when that's not there, there's kind of this void and this like existential thing that happens of like, well, if my business doesn't need me, then I'm not that important. And I'm not as important as I thought I was. And they're like, oh, well, what am I here to do then?
Turn their identity into the business.
Totally. So,
it's hard too when you're in like a company where like your face is the brand and your knowledge is the brand. It's like, if you're not in it, it's like, am I not actually providing value? Yeah.
So the identity that I have now around my business is like, I am the creative genius behind everything. And it's like, my job is to feel as relaxed as possible so that I can come up with the best ideas. And I just inject these ideas into the business, and then it just grows exponentially. And like the team just executes. And I'm just like floating around like in Colombia or like at the gym or like at Barton Springs. And I just get this download of like, oh, this is what we have to do. So it's like, I work my business like an investor, right? Like an investor, they don't look like they're working. All they do is that they're reading, they're going for walks, maybe they take some meetings here and there, but it's like very leisurely, you know, and they're just contemplating a theory around an investment strategy for months, sometimes years.
Yeah.
And then when the market turns, boom, they make one decision, they execute a trade, and then they make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how I want to operate my business. It's just like, I get paid for thinking, not for doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because because we run a done for you marketing and sales agency. So we even noticed too, when the business is suffering the most is when we all have our hands too in the business. When I went to Japan, I was only able to work like 2 hours a day. And when I left, and it wasn't like a hit to my ego where I'm like, damn, I'm not important or maybe I'm not valued here. It was like the business actually grew when I was gone. And I was like, oh, it's because I was constantly giving my opinion over here. Or I was, on the sales management side, I wanted to come in and give my thoughts here. So I was like working alongside. And part of it was like, man, if I'm not working in the business all day, then like, am I really even working?
Yes.
And then because I also have two business partners who actually like, they spend more time in the business. Like, one runs the marketing, one runs the fulfillment. I run the partnerships, acquisition, and then also like, kind of like a COO, like helping and support as needed in different things and developing partnerships and all that. So I actually noticed the times when we're growing the most is like when my main focus is literally just on like acquiring new clients, bringing them into the agency, because then it keeps us from doing busy work. Because if we don't have enough clients or if we're just like hyper analyzing too many people, we're pulling like 7 different levers all at the same time and we're just messing things up when we could literally just be doing way less and making way more.
Yeah. So it's like if you stepped away more and created that space. And when you create space, that's what leaves room for creativity, right? Like the best ideas come in the space.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you're relaxed, when you're in the shower, when you're going for a walk, when you're at the gym, when you're laying in the grass, when you're like on a trip, like that's when the inspiration comes through. And so like you could make one partnership that could double the business. And it's just about the level of thinking, has nothing to do with how much effort you put in.
Right.
So like my whole philosophy with business and my advice to other entrepreneurs and all my friends that I try to enroll them in this idea of like, is not about how much you work, it's about how effective you are. And you can only be effective with clarity of mind. And you can only have clarity of mind by having by mastering the fundamentals of health and allowing yourself to have fun and play and opening up that space. Because when you're doing the same thing every day and you're like in the weeds, it's like you can't see the forest through the tree.
Yeah.
The forest through the trees, right? So it's like I keep challenging myself to increase the quality of thought that I have through whatever means possible. And by doing that, I can collapse time because I start thinking laterally instead of like vertically, like step by step. And so like my advice to entrepreneurs is, and this will support your health, is like give yourself really intense constraints on how many hours you can work. Because that becomes a forcing function for you to systematize and delegate everything else or basically get rid of it. And then that creates this space for the play and the freedom and the fun and the ease. And in that ease and in relaxation comes the best ideas.
Yeah.
And then you bring those ideas to the team and then the team executes, and then that's how you grow exponentially.
Yeah, and it's funny because even when, for example, like right now, like our team, like it's like we're all down to work 80 hours a week. We all have the time on our hands because we're always in the business. So we look at it as like, oh, we have capacity to work in the business. And then I was like, all right, guys, well, let's challenge this. Let's say we brought in 3 clients. Because I mean, we built out full sales teams, do full marketing. I'm like, if we brought on 3 clients this month, how would we be doing things differently? They're like, oh, I wouldn't do like this task anymore. I wouldn't do this. I would delegate this. I would do this. I would do this. And I was like, yeah, so like we need to be thinking as if we're in that state. And by me bringing in more clients in our business, for example, it actually forces my team like my other two partners to be like, okay, well, in this department, how can I make this department as efficient as possible to support the scale, which allows them to actually do what you just said, which is step out of the business a bit and start thinking creatively as well too. So I think a big takeaway from this too is if an entrepreneur is working 80 hours a week and they feel stuck, it's actually taking that step out of the business that's going to get them to that next level, not just putting more inputs. Not always. Sometimes like they need to put a bit more of the inputs into the business, like they're not doing the right inputs.
Yep.
But taking that step back is so valuable. Like, again, going away to Japan, I was terrified. I'm like, the whole bit, like we're about to do a third of the revenue because one of the three partners is leaving. And we did more. And like this month, I literally just focused on partnerships, bringing in more clients, developing stronger relationships. And I'm getting like, we're having our biggest month in the agency. So I was
it's funny. It's funny how that works.
Yeah. I was like, there it is. So
and then I would just like add on to that. It's like create the space and then allocate some of that time towards your health, because then with that extra time that you're spending on your health, you're going to have better energy. You're going to be sleeping better. You're going to be less stressed, and you're just going to have a better state of mind. And if entrepreneurs are paid based on their thinking, then the better the thinking is as a result of the better the feeling, then the more we can feel better, the faster we'll grow our business.
Yep.
And the more enjoyable it will be, because our hormones are where they should be, our cortisol is where it should be, our stress is where it should be, our gut is working properly, we're feeling restored and well slept after a good night's rest. And so I think it's just tailoring those two things together is like the magic formula for really good creative thinking and also a happy entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's an interesting frame. It's like almost like prioritize your health last, but in reality, you're doing all this so it can be the main priority. Right. So it's interesting because it's okay, like take this step back from your business, allocate some more time to fun playing these things, and then delegate a piece of that to your health, which makes it almost feel like it's almost easier to digest. It's like, okay, cool, I can still focus on my business, because that's what everyone's like, yeah, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit, but I want to make a bunch. Like entrepreneurs, like I want to grow my business, and that's always top priority.
Yeah.
But when you do that, when you frame it that way, it actually shows like, well, you're actually doing all this so you can actually delegate time to the most important thing, which is your health.
Yeah, right? Because we're basically like entrepreneurs are basically like athletes, and athletes and sick people, they have to do the same exact things. They have to be really dialed with their nutrition. They have to be really dialed with their recovery. They have to be really dialed with their training. They have to be really dialed with their supplementation. They have to be really dialed with their testing. It's just a life of being dialed, right? Because it's high performance. And so, and like being sick is like you're getting back to normal performance, right? So it's like you got to do way more. Like you're going from -1 or -2 to 0 versus people who are at just 0, they can just go 1 to 2. So it's like you got to work hard just to get back to neutral. And then the people who are going to high performance, you got to work hard to get to high performance. So it's like the same formula sort of applies. And the beauty of like thinking about your business in this way and your health in this way is that for me, everything is about the long term. I want to play long-term games with long-term people. In order to do that sustainably, we have to be healthy.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
27.
27. So what you're going to start to notice as you get a few years older is people are going to start having health issues. And for me, in like another 10 years, like people are going to start dying and people are going to start getting really sick, like stuff that they can't come back from. And so it was really a blessing in disguise for me to have all these issues early on, because now I'm always testing. I'm always taking care of myself. I'm always like managing. I don't have the luxury of burning the candle at both ends, because my body tells me pretty quickly like, hey, this isn't working, right? And so in a sense, it's been quite nice, because now for the rest of my life, I'm going to be dialed, right? And so my, I guess, warning or so to other entrepreneurs out there is like, don't wait for the crisis to happen in order for you to make this a priority. Because if you really care about making a lot of money, the thing that will destroy your bank account more than anything is getting sick.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I think it's, it's like the whole thing of like, don't wait till retirement to prepare for retirement, right? And a lot of people, they don't always think about that. But so real quick, I wanted to take a step back into the, like earlier we were talking a bit about Or actually, before we get to that, you mentioned testing a few times in that. Like, what are these tests that you're doing? Like, is it blood tests? Is there specialty tests that you're doing that? Like, for example, like when you found out you had mold, like you don't usually just pick that up in like a general blood test or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's not like, it's not always clear like your basic physical biomarkers there was, I was going to the doctor for my physical every year. My blood work, like your blood pressure is perfect. Your blood work is amazing. Like you look great. And I'm like, I feel like shit. Like what's going on?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, what are some of those tests that you have done? And like, how did you find like and this kind of loops in the other thing I was going to bring up, like, how do you find like the legit sources of like, cause there's so many people like Gary Brecker, all these different people who have all these different protocols and all these different things. And again, there's some source truth in all of it, but how do you sift through the bullshit yourself?
Such a good question. I mean, that's why I spent so much money, right?
Yeah.
So the best people in health usually have the worst marketing.
Yeah.
So if you see a lot of marketing, probably a bad sign. So the best people are people who are in the weeds. They're working with clients, hundreds, and you only find out about them through referral, usually. They usually don't have a website. They usually really undercharge because they're not good at business. They're just a practitioner. They're not a marketer, right? And so I feel like when you see a lot of stuff online with these big people, not naming names, just saying like, buyer beware, right? I would go, a good framework to use, I guess, for like finding the right person to work with is like, you want to go to whoever you know who's the sickest and then got better.
Yeah.
And say, who did you work with? Or you want to go with the people who have always, or who have gotten like super incredibly healthy and they weren't like sick, but they just went from like a normal average Joe to like top tier health.
Yeah.
And you want to say, who did you work with? That's the best way to do it because those people needed to do a lot of good work in order to get to that place.
Right.
So that's number one. And then number two, the philosophy that everyone gets to adopt if they really want to have good health is to learn to become their own doctor. And so doing the tests that help you identify what your body specifically needs is a bit of a journey, but you're collecting data and building a profile over time that allows you to speak to a really qualified practitioner with a level of understanding that will help you navigate what's actually appropriate for you and what's not. And I'm not saying everyone has to go super deep, but it's like you need to take responsibility.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to care about your health as much as you. And so, for example, like something that people are hearing more about is the MTHFR gene, which is a genetic SNP that basically is a mutation and it means you can't methylate properly, which just basically means that you need to take a special form of B vitamins. Okay.
Yeah, the vitamin B12 methylated.
Yes. Yeah. So this is like a very common thing that people are talking about now.
Yeah.
You knowing that about your body is super important.
Yeah.
And there's probably a couple dozen things like that you need to know. So how do you find that out? Well, you isolate one of these practitioners that you've identified who has tons of referrals, that has really bad marketing, that is probably undercharging, but has really great results with their clients. And you say, I don't know what I don't know. I want to run all the tests that I should know to rule out any big things. And then I want to put together a plan that's personalized for me. And here are what I think my goals are, but I want your help in actually co-creating what my goals actually should be.
Gotcha.
And that way you're kind of, you're in the driver's seat a little bit more.
That makes sense. Yeah. And for those, cause like, I think a lot of people also resonate with this. There's some people who are like pharmaceutical to the day I die, right? Like I will take, like prescription drugs. They've been tested for many, many years. They're going through the FDA approval processes and all this stuff. And then there's the people who are very, very holistic, right? Who are just like, like never going to take a prescription drug. Like I'd rather, let the natural bacteria in the earth, help me to create, more immunization and stuff like that. And too far on either side of the spectrum, I personally believe is a bit dangerous. Like, I think there's a good, I consider myself to be more in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand holistic practice if there's enough backing behind it and it actually makes sense. But also I'm also not going to dismiss the fact that there are pharmaceutical things that can actually help to, actually alter and help change your life or your health or all those things. So
Totally.
for you, like, how do you even go about finding, like, who is this practitioner? Because I feel like every time I search, it's either like, yes, I'm going to rub my hand on your back and I'm going to tell you, what potential cancer you're going to develop in the next 20 years. Or it's very like, like after your diagnosis, your blood works great, you're a healthy person, go home, right? Like, how do you find that in between kind of person?
I think it's just like dating in the sense of like people really underestimate how much volume it really takes to find the right person unless you get really lucky. You know what I mean?
That's a really good, it's a good frame for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I think identifying and finding the right practitioner or doctor for you is like one of the most important things that you could do, because that person is going to be like your concierge health, like Sherpa. And so I would take that as seriously as finding like a good partner. And so, sometimes you just bump into your partner at a party and you guys connect and it's just like, hey, this feels right, and then it just evolves and turns into a beautiful relationship. And sometimes you have to go on 100 dates and really figure out, oh, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And I now know from a place of like real true knowing that this is the one for me, right? And I think that could be said for finding the right doctor. And you should find someone who also has expertise in the things that you're trying to work on. So if you want to optimize for longevity, it's important that you search in a pool of doctors that focus on longevity, right?
And is that a thing you could even search? Because this is kind of a bit of a new, like not a new world to me going to the doctor, but like finding these specialists that you've done research on, like what are some of those, like, is there any like required criteria that, I know we're pretty going deep into the weeds on this, but I think this would be super valuable because I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they go, like you said, I have one friend who literally said, I'm focusing half my net worth this year on getting healthy.
Nice.
And was just like, I'm going all in. And so like someone that probably here in Austin. And but he's like, I've spent already at this point probably like $50,000 this year just on trying to get healthy. And he's like, I found one person who was actually really good at that, kind of surprised me. But is there anything that you recommend besides just like a lot of marketing? Like, is there anything that you recommend, like being not like staying away from, but at least being cautious of, like whether it's how a doctor is positioning themselves or a specialist is positioning themselves? Like what are some things that you're just like and this might be like slightly biased, which is okay because you have a lot of information on this as well and you've done a lot of education, but what are some things you just kind of warn against for people who are starting this journey?
Yeah. Anyone who speaks in all or nothings or broad generalizations of like, everyone should do this. That's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
So anyone who says that, run for the hills. Health to me is a very personalized approach, and it needs to account for your family history. It needs to account for your life experience. It needs to account for your traumas. It needs to account for everything. And so I would just beware of anyone who makes these like big claims. And then obviously the marketing thing, which we already talked about. And then the other thing to look out for is someone who's dogmatic, of like, they're really like niched into this thing, whether it's a particular diet or a particular supplement or a particular drug or a particular anything.
Because those people actually come across in a lot of ways as the most credible person.
Yes, because they've specialized in their like.
It's like nobody knows this supplement better than this guy. He must be legit.
Yeah, and that's how you build a brand on social media, right? Yeah. Is like you narrow in on like one thing, and then you just pound that same topic until you're blue in the face, and that's how you grow, right? Because audience and social media platforms are like, oh, this is what this guy's about. So like now we can aggregate the right type of people towards him.
Yeah.
And that's how you grow fast, right? So I think the best practitioners are open-minded. They're always continuing to learn and questioning their own hypothesis and theories. And they are working with people from all different walks of life. So not just the sickest people, not just the high performers, but everyone in between. And so they have just a diversified well of experience to draw upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And so where do you feel like, that question might lead us down a whole other rabbit hole that I don't think would add a lot of value to people, but also too, I think it's gonna be funny in the podcast or like the clips on Instagram, you're gonna see your chair, the back of your chair. I remember you warned about that, bro doesn't know too. They don't have super glue on the back of his chair, so it keeps
flowing up.
Yeah, it was listening, man. It was feeling elevated. It was like, I'm like, damn, this guy's onto something. Chair's about to hire a specialist like Ane or something. Yeah. Ane, by the way. Also, one thing I want to specify too before we continue is I'm going to be doing 3 podcasts back to back here. So I promise you, I changed my clothes and I washed my clothes. I'm going to be wearing the same outfit in the next 3 episodes. So just want to specify that here. But yeah, so for you specifically, when it comes to like just wellness as a whole, like I guess besides like getting healthy and doing this, like why did you start this whole mission of like really trying to become the wellness daddy, right? And become the guy who's like, and I watched some of your content as well too. And then Eli even sent a video about that, the air filter, which I'm definitely getting when I moved to Miami, because somebody told me that a lot of the apartments are mold because of how humid it is.
Yeah.
And so like, and I noticed you were very unbiased and you gave multiple options. Like, what is your mission? What's like your core value and your principle behind what you're doing?
I think I want to make being healthy and living well cool and sexy. Because if I saw someone who looked like me, talk like me, walk like me, doing the things that I'm doing, talking about the things that I'm talking about, I probably would have made different decisions earlier in my life, and maybe have forgoed a lot of these health challenges because I partied pretty hard in my early years, and that definitely didn't set me up for success. And media dictates culture, right? So when we see media, it influences what we think. What we think influences what we do, and what we do creates the world that we live in. So it's like, if we want to change the world, we have to start with media. And so I've been in media my whole career, 10 years now, over 10 years. And I just have had a very interesting perspective to be able to see, like I've impacted hundreds of millions of people through the content that I've made over the course of my career on different various platforms and through clients and on my own stuff. And I just see how it really shapes everything. And I feel like there is a wellness renaissance taking place right now, where it's like, I used to be the weird guy who like put on the blue light blocking glasses and was like tracking my sleep. And like I was a strange guy, you know?
Now you're just a weird guy.
Yeah. And I felt it was very isolating. Yeah. And man, I was like so young. I was in my early 20s. Imagine being 21, 22, sick, man, like really sick and alone and not knowing what to do and very isolated. And I just realized that health is so important, and it kind of sucks to do it on your own. It can be very like you're in your own silo. So like I'm trying to build community around this idea that like, hey, you don't have to party and go out to have fun. Like we could all go do breath work or hit the sauna or do a workout or whatever, and kind of like influence this lifestyle at a wider, and I feel like I'm doing it, you know. And now I'm working on this program called Shift, which basically helps people change their identity to become the version of themselves that has the health outcome that they want. And the reason why I'm building that program and why I converted the channel to Wellness Daddy is because I was kind of in this loop of getting sick and then getting better and getting sick and then getting better. And I was like, dude, something fundamental needs to change. Yeah. And it was like who I was, like how I saw myself, my self-image, like the beliefs and the story that I told myself was really keeping me in this loop. And so Wellness Daddy was kind of like an attempt to basically create this new character that existed already in the future. And now I was kind of forced to live into it. And I would back myself into this new identity that just didn't have any of these issues that I previously had. It was like impossible. And so it's a way of reality transurfing and basically bending reality to create the results that I want. And so now I'm helping people do that inside of that program, and it's in the early stages of development. So I'm like building it out with some alpha testers right now.
Love that.
But it's all about brainwashing and hypnosis and identity work and stuff like that. And I found that if you can get the identity piece right, everything else follows suit.
Yeah.
So if you see yourself as a healthy entrepreneur, a high-performing healthy entrepreneur, you're going to go to bed on time. You're going to eat the right food. You're going to take the supplements. The behavior becomes automatic.
So how does... I think like, you know, through things like hypnosis and stuff like that too, which I used to think was very like just kind of shammy in general, like just the whole idea. I mean, growing up, hypnosis is just like the fucking spinning wheel thing on TV, and you're just like, this is corny as hell. Like, and then, you know, but it's, But I think there's a lot of truth to like, really going through exercises to truly feel that identity, right? Like I felt more rich when I didn't have any money than when I started making money, right? Because I had that identity. And then as I started growing, you start running into challenges, limiting beliefs, you realize how hard it truly is. And you become like humbled, but you almost, in some ways, it's easy to almost lose that identity. And also too, and I'm very open about this too, I actually went through a big episode of like anxiety, depression the past few years. And a lot of it was actually health anxiety too, right? I was super anxious about my health. I was trying to make it perfect, like you would say. I would be with a friend and they'd cough and I'd be like, I can't get near them. I'm being optimized. Or like I would cough myself. I'm like, dude, and then I would go to Dr. Google and just right away. And then my doctor would tell me not to Google, but I'm like, well, I'm also trying to learn so I can advocate and also communicate what's going on. So my question to you is, how do you, when you're not in that state, like you were not the healthy entrepreneur yet, right? Like, and technically if you have the mindset, you're going to start taking the actions, but it's almost hard to believe yourself, right? Like when you're like, hey, I'm going to be a healthy entrepreneur, or I'm a healthy entrepreneur. And then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh shit, I'm not really that, not the healthy entrepreneur I want to be. So how do you like, and there's the idea of just take aggressive action, like, to shut up and do it. That works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. Like, what are some things that you would say, like whether it's a quick exercise someone can do or whatever it is to just get somebody into that state and actually start becoming that healthy entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I have a whole process, but a few pieces of the process that I think could be really powerful for people is number one is picking a name, like really choosing a character. So for me, it's the Jolly Wellness Daddy, okay? And when I think about the Jolly Wellness Daddy, I ask myself throughout my day, what would the Jolly Wellness Daddy do right now? And I did a video with this guy who won the CrossFit Games 5 times in a row, the last 5 years. And he did the same thing. And he talked about how at one point he started to identify as a CrossFit Games athlete. But that only happened after he had won the CrossFit Games twice, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is you go on this quest, right, towards this vision self of you, right? And you're moving in the direction of this new identity. And you want to start collecting evidence that you are this person. And then the evidence kind of reinforces that identity. So the action has to be taken, right?
Yeah.
So you take the action, but then you set your RAS to start looking for this evidence to support that this is actually the identity that you are. And so as you get more evidence, then it starts to reinforce this identity. And as the identity becomes stronger, the action becomes stronger.
Yeah.
And so you can just ask yourself, what would a healthy entrepreneur do right now? A healthy entrepreneur would go for a morning walk. Okay, let's go for a morning walk.
Yeah.
Healthy entrepreneur would prep his food. Okay, let's prep our food.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can just open up your notes app and you can just start writing down all the evidence. And then you can start looking at it and just reinforcing, oh yeah, I did do that. Oh yeah, I did. It's little reminders, right?
Yeah.
Then the other thing, this is really powerful, is I did a video with this guy named Chase Hughes, who's the #1 behavior expert in the world. And he talked about how we're more like primitive caveman brain than we are like sophisticated higher consciousness brain. Like that part of our brain has been alive for millions of years, whereas our prefrontal cortex has been alive for like thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
And so if we want to influence ourselves, we have to influence the mammalian part of our brain. There's actually not a part of our brain that's associated with language yet, which is kind of a weird concept because language is like a really new thing. And so, but there is something for the vision and something for hearing, right? And something for making noises and feeling stuff, right? Like there's all pieces of our brain that exist in the more primitive part of our brain, right?
Yeah.
And so he gave me this exercise where go to Pinterest and make a vision board of this new version of yourself. Like collect some imagery that represents this person that you're trying to become.
Yeah.
And then take all that imagery and put it into a digital photo album and put this digital photo album right by your bed, and then put another one right on your office table, put another one in your kitchen, and put these things on replay 24/7. And what happens is you're basically imprinting this imagery onto your mammalian part of your brain as frequently as possible. And that starts to make what is unfamiliar familiar
Yeah.
to that primitive part of our brain.
Yeah.
And by doing this, we draw these things into our life automatically.
It's interesting because the time I felt the most like, even when I was like feeling like I was not on my game, I was just kind of all over the place. The one thing that kept me super grounded is I call it like my my perfect day story. And you probably heard of this too, where you write down in extremely deep detail what your perfect day would look like. The temperature outside, who's in that perfect day, where you're living, the house, the food that you're eating, like, you know, what activities you're doing. Like, what is that, like the you made it day? And then it's reading that every single day and taking actions towards that, but also experiencing those as you can. And then on top of that, the one thing that actually helped me to really develop my skills, I used to have a huge ego back in college. I would start up a startup and I'd be like, this thing's going to take off. It would gain a shit ton of traction. We'd raise like even seed funding and all this. Months later, it would just be gone. And a lot of it was because I was like, okay, well, I feel like I already accomplished and did it. Like the accomplishment was the launch, not the longevity. Right. So I got stuck in this cycle of just launching all these things that actually had a bunch of momentum. And then I would just shut them down because I'm like, did it. Like, and I think a lot of it was also, my subconsciously realized things were now starting to get hard and there was real challenges ahead. And like the sustainability, I'm like, oh, that's exhausting. And then I would pivot to something else. Right. And I think it's a bit of like, but I know, you know, for some it's shiny object syndrome. For some people, it's just not being cut out to be an entrepreneur. And that was, so for me, I was like, the big thing I need to shift in my identity is like, just shutting up, stop telling everybody what I'm doing and just like working. And I needed like that 6-month period to develop the skills, to build myself up, to prove to myself that I could do the work. And I actually had a picture. It was like a guy with like an entire office. There was hundreds of computers. He was the only one sitting at the desk. All the lights were off and it was just him and his monitor. And that was it. And I used to look at that picture every single day. And I'm like, I got to be this guy for 6 months if I want to change my life. That guy is very unhealthy for me now. Sometimes I still go back into that version. But I literally pictured myself being that guy sitting at the desk. Everyone's gone. There's no noise. It's just me and my work. And yeah, so I just kind of adding to that, like I would look at, there was like 4 pictures I looked at. One was one of the Hemsworth brothers just absolutely ripped in a boxing gym. And I was like, I'm not going to look like that in the face, but maybe you can look like that in the body. And then I started going to my boxing gym all the time again. And like, so yeah, man. So with that said, what I'd love for you to do here, I think we're coming up here on time, but I'd love for you to shout out anything or give any last minute piece of advice, or I know you're working on the new program as well too. So whatever you want to say to the camera, feel free, man. You got it.
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who wants to transform their health, just join the wait list for Shift. You can go to wellnessdaddy.com/shift or wellnessdaddy.com/waitlist. And then you can get on the wait list for Shift. And if you want to like just educate yourself, learn more about these different health topics, just go to the YouTube channel, Wellness Daddy. And yeah, jump on the newsletter. You can hear my like basically weekly lessons and like my journal entries. I put them on the newsletter. Also, it's always like, hey, this is what I'm experimenting with. This is the things I'm working on. So people tell me that it's very like a vulnerable kind of inside look at like what's happening in my life, and people really like it. So newsletter, YouTube channel, and then get on the wait list for Shift.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, go do all those things right now in order. If you want to bypass the wait list, just do #no waitlist or / with no waitlist, and you'll get right in. So that's what I did. Thanks so much, Kyle. Appreciate you being on here, man. And I hope you all got some awesome value today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man.